All right, as my battery dies, we just got done working on Robbie's K5 for the video you're about to watch. It's wordy, it goes all over the place. I talk a lot, but in the end, I think we narrowed it down without actually knowing, maybe the actual mechanics of it all, but I think we narrowed it down, and we might have him completely fixed on his crank no start and sometimes stall problem that he's been having. Enjoy the video. So here's the old oil pressure switch, sending switch. The body should be a lot longer. This one completely fell apart, and I had this one laying back there like that wasn't leaking or anything, but it wasn't hooked up, which was causing the oil pressure gauge to read high, but the car was working. And that's my concern. Is that if it's something like that, if that was the problem, why was it working sometimes and wasn't working other times? I don't know. So what I'm going to do now is start it up. Let's see if it works. You know, it's been not running for an hour. Let's see if it'll prime itself without doing that jumper like we did the last time. I don't know. While I was letting it warm up and run, I took my meter and hooked it to ground and put it on volts. So I got my red lead on ground and my black lead I'm probing. So if I touch to the ground lug, not to the end of the meter, just to the ground lug, I got 0.0 millivolt loss. So that's the same lug that the ground lead is connected to. That's the same thing as me connecting that together. And then if I go to the ground to a chassis ground, I got 0.1 from the battery to the chassis. But if I go to the grounding lug that is from the body, so it goes from the battery to the body on the radiator support, and then from the radiator support down to the chassis, I have 0.1 millivolt, but it's not running. When it's running, I get 15 millivolts. I almost want to say bad ground here. Maybe there was a bad ground problem. So what if I put it on continuity? So I'm not losing continuity. Let me go back to volts. So 0.1 on the chassis when it's off. What about when it's running? Just let me put the key on. Let's go with that. Let's go with key on first. So key on. I don't know if this makes a difference. Somebody might be laughing at me, but I go to the chassis. I got 2.7 millivolts. Now if I go to where the wire is going from the body to the chassis, 2.7 millivolts. Now if I go right to where that is connected here, I got 1.4. So from the battery lug to the body is 1.4, but then when I make it down here, it goes to 2.6. That's ignition on. Now let's start the car, which is going to complete circuits. Now with it running, going here, I actually have less. I'm at 0.1 to 0 millivolts at the lug here. If I go down to the chassis where I had 2.6, I now have 14.8 millivolts. 15.3, 15.6, 15.6, going up. 8, 9, 16. Going up. 16.4, it's up to 16.5. It's going up as it warms up. So now it just turned off and you heard that weird noise. And that wasn't me doing anything. All I was doing was just clamping onto a ground. And I'm back to 2.2 millivolts. But it died. I got a ground issue. Alright, so that whole switch, this is good. I'm getting closer. I think I got a ground issue. All I was doing was switching my lead so that I was on I was putting the clamp end on a chassis ground. I didn't touch anything to make it turn off. I got my clamp end on a chassis ground, and this one coming up to here. So I'm only on that wire. I'm going to try if I can see if I can get it started again. 8, 9, it's just climbing. As it gets hot, my voltage loss is climbing on my ground side. What does that mean? 11, 12. So I'm on the chassis ground with one end, and I'm on the battery negative with the other end, and I'm reading voltage. As it warms up, my voltage is going up. Albeit it's millivolts, but it's rising. 16.3. So I'm 0.1 on the engine block, but I'm 16.5 now on the chassis. That time I got up to 18 millivolts, and it didn't shut off. But when it did shut off, you got the connector in a ring terminal flat on the chassis. Imagine my fingernail being the ring terminal and it's sitting on the chassis, so I wanted to take the end of my test lead and grab it on like the neck of the ring terminal, so I bent it up, and as I was bending it up is when the car stalled, and I had hit 17.3 millivolts at that point. Then I bent it up and down a couple of times while I was running this last time to see if maybe my jiggling it made a difference, and it doesn't now, and it's not stalling, but the voltage, we're going to call it a voltage loss, got as high as 18 millivolts and growing as time and temperature went up. So I don't know if it's time or temperature, but I think that I'm going to say, and here, so what it is you got your negative battery cable. Negative battery cable, the big cable goes down to the engine block, and I have almost no loss from the terminal to the engine block. Then you got that like 10 gauge wire or so goes to the firewall, along with 3 other ring terminals. One is going to like the forward light harness. Another one is going down to the chassis. It looks like it could be like a number 12 wire going down to the chassis, and then the one coming a little leg off the battery. And it's rusty. It's got a star washer on it, you know, one of those grounding washers. Looks factory. But I'm gonna think that it could be this wire going down to the chassis. So I'm gonna take all this apart, I'm gonna clean it up, and I'm gonna run a new wire from the firewall down to the chassis, and let's see if that makes any kind of difference. Let me go make up a harness and I'll be right back with you. Alright, so what I did was I made up a new ground cable. This is about an 8 or a 10, probably an 8. It might be a 10. And I'm gonna replace this, the original one. Where is my original one? Here's my original one. I'm gonna leave the original one in place, and I'm gonna bring this right up alongside it. So I got a bunch of, I cleaned up the bolt. I got a bunch of those star washer things. So I'm gonna stack them like that. Then I'm gonna put this fat one here. Oh, where's my battery cable one? Alright, so this one is the original one. I take this off. You know what? Before I do this, I'm going to clean up here with a roll lock. So that's the one that comes off the battery cable. This is the one that comes. There's a lot of corrosion on that. Alright, this is the one that comes with the wiring harness. So this thicker one goes down to the chassis, and this thin one goes into the forward light harness, and it attaches to the firewall. This one comes from the negative battery cable terminal, and it goes to the firewall where these two attach together. They ground the body, and then this little guy here goes down to the chassis. This is our suspect here. So let me clean off the other end of our suspect, because I'm going to leave this in place rather than cut it out. Alright, and now I'm just going to do the same thing with this roll lock on the spot on the chassis. Oh, I see it. Okay. And then this spot right here. Alright, so these two go like that. Where's my new one? Here's my new one. So I got my bolt and a stall washer. Then I got a stall washer, one of the original ones, stall washer, and the battery cable one, and then I got the original stall washer. this guy and this guy are going to stay together. And I'm going to bring this down. And in. Okay. All right. New ground complete. Put it right there. And put it on DC volts. And we got 0, which is where we want to be. I left it running. I went inside for a couple minutes and I put a new end on my test lead and it stopped running. And now it's not restarting. The prime circuit on the fuel pump is working. I hear it. And of course that time it started. Right now, I'm at less than a millivolt where I was at 18. On the chassis. I'm at 0.5 millivolt. 0.3. It's actually going down. It was going up. Is the fuel pump dead? Alright, now it's slowly starting to climb up. Most of the day, but I think we got some success. Okay. No matter what we did, it didn't make anything fixed. We ran it for a while and it would shut off. So the only thing that still just got me in the gut, and sometimes that's what you got to go with. Go with your gut. Was that weird thing with the millivolts on the ground. How it grew just over time and temperature, and who knows which was making it do it, but it would continue to come up to about 18, I think was the highest we got before it shut down. And then it would just shut down. So about 10 minutes of running and it would just shut down. It just didn't, I don't know what it meant. I don't know whether it's bad or it's good. How many millivolts should be on your ground circuit? Who the heck knows? I don't know that stuff. I know if you had like real voltage, you know, 3, 4, 5 volts, even 2 volts, 1 volt, like a full volt on the ground side, that's definitely a problem. Maybe you're not grounded properly. The millivolts, I don't know, because carrying like anywhere from 0.1 millivolt all the way up to like 2.5 is usually a ground circuit anyway. So I don't know, but that how it grew over time, I'm thinking, and temperature maybe. I think it was more over time as the fuel pump ran, maybe. I don't know. But I was narrowing it down to that. The oil pressure sending switch had to be done anyway, but like I said, it ran good before that. So it really irked me. And what I did was I even took out I made a giant jumper lead at a speaker wire, and I put it from the ground lug on the chassis where the fuel pump is, all the way around the truck to the ground on the battery, and it ran the longest before it shut off, but it did shut off. And I still had like 11, 12 millivolts. It never got up to 18, but it was like 11, 12, and then it eventually shut off. So what did I do? Well, I checked. I was kept on checking from the battery ground lug to the chassis on this side, never checking that side, right? Because the chassis is the chassis, it's all connected. Yeah, no. On this side, I had a much different reading than I had on that side, and my resistance on that side to the fuel pump. So from the fuel pump to that side of the chassis, I had like almost no resistance. And then I come to this side of the chassis on that ground side, and the resistance was like double whatever the reading was. It didn't matter. So there was definitely this difference between that chassis rail and this chassis rail with regard to how much resistance there was going back to the grounding lug on the chassis and the back driver's side of the car. So what did I do? I took a ground strap, went from the engine, which we know had a good ground, the engine to the chassis on this side, and guess what? Problem solved. Started the truck up, and there it was. I had like 2.5 millivolts, and it didn't grow, it didn't change over time. It was just there, 2.5, 2.4, 2.6, and it worked. So let me show you. So that's all I did down there. I put a ground strap from an exhaust stud, and then over to the chassis, and I had that laying around. I put it in, and it seems like we're fixed. So I will update you in another video and let you know whether this is the fix or not, but it just ran for about 20 minutes, did not turn off, and my voltage, I guess you're gonna call it voltage drop, but voltage from the ground lug on the starter, on the battery, down to the chassis on this side and down to the chassis on the other side were both the same, right around 2.5 millivolts. So I think that's the fix. I'll link the parts that I used in the description below like I normally do. And as always, thanks for sticking through this one, and thanks for watching.